Welcome to the Dark File, Case 03. Some killers hide in shadows, others become the shadows themselves. He shuffled down the street, muttering under his breath, his fingers twitching in a slow, unnatural rhythm, opening, closing. His hair was ash gray, his mustache drooping like a curtain, and every part of him seemed drained of life. A neighbor who saw him that night would later remember shivering at the sight, never realizing she was staring at the man who had just stolen her son. The victim was young Francis McDonald. He would be found hanging from a tree, brutalized, his body showing signs of unspeakable abuse. The killer's name was Albert Fish. To some, he was the Gray Man. To others, the Brooklyn Vampire or the Boogeyman. Whatever you called him, the reality was far worse. Albert Fish was born in the 1870s in America, and madness was in his bloodline. Relatives slipped into asylums. His mother saw visions no one else could. His father died when Albert was just 5. Unable to raise him, his mother abandoned him to an orphanage. That place left scars no child could escape. Boys were stripped naked, whipped until blood streaked down their backs, humiliated in front of others. But Albert was different. He began to crave it. He would later confess that pain itself became his pleasure. Beatings weren't punishment. They were initiation. That cycle of agony and desire fused into something poisonous. As he grew older, his urges twisted further. He prowled New York's poorest neighborhoods, hunting children. Their disappearances often went unnoticed. He lived in plain sight, even marrying and fathering 6 children. But behind closed doors, he played disturbing games, fed his family raw meat, and carried fantasies no one could imagine. By the early 1900s, Fish's fixations reached grotesque new depths. He dabbled in self-mutilation, shoving needles into his body, burning himself with fire, and constructing what he called his implements of hell. A paddle studded with nails, a cat-o'-nine tails, and butcher's knives wrapped neatly in a canvas sack. He began targeting boys with greater cruelty, sometimes torturing them for days. Cannibalism soon followed. In letters later discovered, he described his meals with chilling detail, as if they were recipes rather than crimes. One of his earliest confirmed victims was young Francis McDonald in 1924. But the killings did not stop there. In 1927, 4-year-old Billy Gaffney vanished while playing outside. Another child, barely 3 years old, said only, "The boogeyman took him." The description fit Albert Fish. What happened next was so horrific that even hardened detectives refused to release all the details. What Fish did admit, how he cut, cooked, and consumed the boy's flesh, was enough to stain history with his name forever. But it was Grace Budd's disappearance in 1928 that finally exposed him. Fish posed as a wealthy farmer offering her older brother a job. Instead, he charmed his way into the Budd family home, sat with them for dinner, and the moment he saw Grace, 10 years old, he changed his plan. He asked to take her along to what he claimed was a birthday party. Her parents, poor but trusting, allowed it. Grace kissed her mother goodbye, skipped down the street beside Albert Fish, and was never seen alive again. 6 years later, the Budd family received a letter. Inside were details only Grace's killer could know. He described the murder in graphic detail, even recounting how he ate her flesh. That letter, along with a trail of handwriting and stolen envelopes, finally led police to Albert Fish. At trial, Fish pleaded insanity. He ranted about voices from God, about apostles demanding blood, about his sins needing to be purged with fire and needles. But the jury wasn't swayed. He was declared sane enough to be guilty. On January 16, 1936, Albert Fish was strapped into the electric chair. Witnesses claimed he almost welcomed it. "What a thrill it will be," he said. "The only thrill I haven't tried." 2 jolts later, the Gray Man was gone. Albert Fish left behind more questions than answers. How many children really died by his hand? Dozens? Hundreds? We'll never know. But his name lives on as a symbol of humanity's darkest corners, where pain becomes desire, and the line between man and monster vanishes. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Case 05 drops next week. Because in the dark files, the past doesn't stay buried. It waits.